One of my favourite scenes in these four films that we've currently got is after Gandalf was tumbled.
At 85, Sir Ian McKellen sat in his London home surrounded by photographs from New Zealand. The interviewer asked about Gandalf's legacy. McKellen looked at a picture of himself in the grey robes and wizard's hat. His eyes filled with tears. "I thought I was just playing a wizard," he said quietly. "I didn't realize I was playing Hope." For 2 decades, he'd discussed the technical challenges, the action sequences, the CGI. But this was different. This was the truth he'd been circling around for years.
It's very true to the period in which it's set, yeah.
Yeah.
But I hope it also seems immediate enough to...
Gandalf wasn't just Tolkien's creation or Peter Jackson's vision. Gandalf was every marginalized person who'd ever had to hide who they really were. Every outsider who'd found a chosen family. Every old man who refused to surrender to darkness. At 85, McKellen finally understood. He wasn't just in those films. Those films were inside him. Gandalf's staff, Gandalf's wisdom, Gandalf's defiant refusal to let evil win. That was his story. That was always his story.
I'm just glad it was Gandalf the Grey and not Gandalf the White, because there are 2 Gandalfs in The Lord of the Rings, you know, when he's resurrected as Gandalf the White.
The actor who almost said no. In 1999, Ian McKellen was 60, a titan of British theatre, respected, decorated, but relatively unknown to mainstream film audiences. Peter Jackson sent him the script for The Fellowship of the Ring. McKellen read it and hesitated. A year in New Zealand, away from theatre, away from London, playing a wizard in what could easily become a laughable fantasy film. He was classically trained, seriously. This felt beneath him. Then he read Tolkien, read about Gandalf's mission, about fighting impossible odds, about standing against rising darkness, about protecting the innocent. McKellen recognized something. This wasn't just a wizard. This was an allegory for every fight he'd ever fought. As an openly gay man in a hostile industry, as an activist for LGBTQ+ rights, as someone who'd spent decades being told to hide, Gandalf never hid. Gandalf stood in the light and declared war on darkness. McKellen called Jackson back. He was in. The isolation he felt. Filming in New Zealand was harder than McKellen expected, not physically, emotionally. He was separated from his partner, from his theater community, from everything familiar. The scale of the production was massive, overwhelming, and McKellen was terrified. He'd done Shakespeare for decades. Stage acting was his foundation. Film acting, especially blockbuster filmmaking, was different. He felt lost. There's a famous moment during filming when McKellen broke down crying. He was surrounded by green screens, acting alone against nothing, and he said, "This is not why I became an actor." The crew comforted him. Jackson reassured him. But McKellen felt like a fraud, like he'd made a terrible mistake. It wasn't until he saw early footage that he understood. The technology wasn't replacing his performance. It was amplifying it. Gandalf's power wasn't in the effects. It was in McKellen's eyes, his voice, his presence. The wizard was real because McKellen made him real. The speech that changed everything. The bridge of Khazad Dûm. Gandalf facing the Balrog.
I didn't think it would end this way.
End? No, the journey doesn't end here.
"You shall not pass" became instantly iconic. But for McKellen, that scene was personal. He'd spent his entire life as an activist telling bigotry and hatred, "You shall not pass." Telling homophobia it would not win. Telling oppression it would not stand. When he delivered that line, he wasn't just acting. He was channeling every defiant moment of his life. Every time he'd stood up for gay rights when it was dangerous. Every time he'd refused to hide who he loved. Gandalf's sacrifice wasn't just narrative. It was real. McKellen poured everything into that moment. His rage, his determination, his absolute refusal to let darkness win. When filming wrapped on that scene, he was physically exhausted, emotionally drained. The crew applauded. McKellen sat down and cried. Because he'd just expressed something he'd never been able to articulate. That resistance is sacred. That standing against evil, even when it costs everything, matters. The family he found. The Fellowship cast became McKellen's family.
I pray for it.
My work is now finished.
Elijah Wood, Viggo Mortensen, Sean Astin, Orlando Bloom. They bonded during the brutal New Zealand shoot. Long hours, intense physical demands, isolation from home. McKellen, the oldest, became a mentor figure, but also, for the first time in his career, he felt truly accepted. They knew he was gay. It didn't matter. They loved him anyway, treated him as an equal, as a family. McKellen has said the Fellowship wasn't just acting, it was real. Those relationships, that love, that loyalty. He'd spent decades in the theater feeling slightly apart, respected but separate. With this cast, he belonged. They'd stay in touch after filming, reunite for premieres, text each other. The younger actors still call him for advice. That acceptance, that family, meant everything to McKellen. Gandalf led the Fellowship. But the Fellowship saved McKellen, gave him something he'd never had: complete belonging. The recognition that shocked him. The Fellowship of the Ring opened in December 2001.
Nothing down there.
It's Gollum.
Gone.
He's been following us.
McKellen expected respectful reviews, a successful film, nothing more. Instead, it became a cultural phenomenon. Gandalf became beloved. Children dressed as wizards for Halloween. Adults quoted his lines. The Academy nominated him for Best Supporting Actor. At 62, after decades of ignored stage work, Hollywood finally recognized him. But the real shock came from the letters. From gay teenagers who saw Gandalf as a queer icon. An outsider who found family, who fought for those who couldn't fight for themselves. From parents who thanked him for playing a moral compass their children could look up to. From people battling depression who said Gandalf's return as Gandalf the White gave them hope. McKellen was overwhelmed. He'd thought he was making a fantasy film. He'd actually made something that mattered, that helped people, that gave them strength. That recognition changed everything. The Hobbit films. He regrets. When Peter Jackson called about The Hobbit, McKellen hesitated. He was 73. The role was physically demanding. But it was Gandalf, his character, his friend. He returned. The Hobbit films were different, overproduced, too reliant on CGI. The magic of the original trilogy felt diluted. McKellen has been diplomatic in interviews, but honest. The Hobbit wasn't the same. It felt corporate, manufactured. He still gave everything to the performance, still found moments of genuine emotion. But he knew. The audience knew. These films were unnecessary. Cash grabs. McKellen doesn't regret playing Gandalf again. He regrets that the films weren't worthy of the character, that they diminished rather than honored Tolkien's work. At 85, he made peace with it. Not every return is triumphant. Not every sequel captures lightning twice. The Hobbit films exist. They're not what they should have been. That's okay. The original trilogy stands eternal. That's what matters. The aging he sees. In mirrors, McKellen is 85 now. He looks in mirrors and sees Gandalf looking back. The white hair, the deep lines, the ancient eyes. It's disconcerting. He became the character he played, or the character predicted who he'd become. Gandalf was ancient, wise, weathered. McKellen is now all those things. He moves slower. Tires are easier. His body is failing the way all bodies eventually fail, but his mind remains sharp. His passion remains fierce. Just like Gandalf, the wizard never gave up, never stopped fighting, never surrendered to age or darkness. McKellen takes inspiration from that. On hard days when his body aches, when the industry has moved past him, when he feels invisible, he thinks of Gandalf. Still standing, still fighting, still believing good will win. At 85, McKellen understands something profound. He didn't just play Gandalf, he became him. The lines between actor and character blurred years ago. Now they're indistinguishable. McKellen is Gandalf. Gandalf is McKellen. The regret he carries. McKellen's biggest regret isn't about the films, it's about what he didn't do. During filming, Tolkien's text included subtle prejudices, racial coding in the orcs, problematic depictions of Eastern peoples. McKellen noticed, said nothing. He was too focused on his own performance, too worried about his own challenges. Now, at 85, he wishes he'd spoken up, used his platform to push Jackson toward more inclusive casting, more thoughtful representation. The Lord of the Rings is a masterpiece, but it's not perfect. It reflects the biases of Tolkien's era and the filmmaker's blind spots. McKellen knows he could have done more, should have done more. He's spoken about this in recent interviews, not to diminish what was achieved, but to acknowledge what was missed. That's growth. That's wisdom. Understanding your failures doesn't erase your successes. It just makes you more human, more real, more Gandalf-like. Because Gandalf never pretended to be perfect either. The truth about Gandalf's power. What McKellen finally understands at 85 is what Gandalf's real power was. Not magic, not the staff or the sword or the dramatic speeches. It was love. Gandalf loved the hobbits. I loved Middle-earth. Loved the imperfect, flawed, beautiful world he was trying to save. That love drove everything, every sacrifice, every battle, every moment of standing firm against darkness. McKellen lived that same truth. His activism wasn't about anger, it was about love. Love for the LGBTQ+ community, love for theater, love for storytelling, love for the possibility of a better world. Gandalf resonated because McKellen brought that love to the character, made it visible, make it tangible. People responded to Gandalf because they felt loved by him, protected, seen. That's what McKellen gave them. Not a wizard, not magic, but the radical act of loving people enough to fight for them. That's Gandalf's legacy. That's McKellen's legacy. They're the same thing now. The final scene. He dreams about McKellen dreams sometimes of filming one more scene. Not a full film, just one moment. Old Gandalf, older than ever, walking through the Shire after all the wars are over, after evil has been defeated, after peace has been won, seeing the hobbits living their lives, laughing, loving, free, and Gandalf smiling, knowing his work is done, knowing they're safe. McKellen wakes from these dreams with tears on his face. Because he knows that scene will never be filmed. He's too old. The trilogy is complete. There's no story left to tell. But he wants it anyway. I want one last chance to put on the robes and the hat and the staff. I want to be Gandalf one more time, to say goodbye properly, to the character, to the audience, to that version of himself that saved his life and career. Maybe he'll never get that scene. Maybe the dream is enough. Maybe Gandalf already said goodbye when he sailed into the West. The legacy that outlives him. Ian McKellen knows Gandalf will outlive him. Long after he's gone, children will discover those films. Watch that wizard stand on that bridge. Hear him say, "You shall not pass." Feel hope when Gandalf the White returns. That immortality is strange, comforting, and unsettling. McKellen won't be there to explain what Gandalf meant to him. Won't be there to tell gay teenagers that Gandalf was for them too. Won't be there to say that the wizard who fought darkness was just an old actor who'd spent his life fighting darkness in smaller, quieter ways. But maybe he doesn't need to be there. Maybe the performance says everything. Maybe young people watching those films will see themselves in Gandalf. Will find courage in his courage. Will learn that the chosen family matters more than blood. That standing against evil is worth any cost. That hope survives everything. That's the legacy. Not awards or recognition or box office numbers, but lives changed. People were saved. Darkness pushed back. That's what Gandalf did. That's what McKellen did. That's what remains. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Ian McKellen's journey with Gandalf and how a fantasy wizard became a symbol of hope and resistance, please like and subscribe. We explore the human stories behind cinema's most iconic characters. the truths that took decades to understand, and the legacies that outlive us all.